Hi everyone, it's Christine from Christine's Stampin' Spot. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and welcome to my Sea of Textures online card class. If you are new to my online card classes, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here and I'm really happy with how the cards for this class turned out and I hope that you love them too. So let's go ahead and go over the materials that we will be using for this class. We are of course using the Sea of Textures bundle, which includes the Sea of Textures stamp set as well as the Under the Sea coordinating framelit dies. We are also using two ink pad colors today. We are using Tranquil Tide and Blackberry Bliss. Now I chose these two particular colors because I'm using a lot of the different coordinating papers from the Designer Series paper stack that coordinates with this suite from the annual catalog. But of course, always remember that you are not married to this particular color palette, that this stamp set of course can be used in all different kinds of Stampin' Up! Ink pad colors. So always remember that. My classes are just meant to sort of guide and have card designs for, you know, that particular color palette, but then you can go on and of course use the stamp set and dies in any way that you see fit. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Are you guys ready to see card number one? Again, like I said, I'm really happy with how these cards came out, so I hope that you love them. This is card number one. It says, thanks for reaching out. And we have this really fun design that we've created using a stamp from the stamp set to create our own background paper. We've stamped the beautiful octopus, which is the star of the stamp set, I believe. And then we have a cutout from the die set, which I've pre-cut for you, and some Designer Series paper and some ribbon. So let's go ahead and get started with this card. This is a very easy to put together card. You want to reach for your packet that looks like this. You've got some Tranquil Tide Designer Series, cardstock, some Designer Series paper in the crumb cake color, and then Blackberry Bliss, scalloped square, stitched square, and then you'll also see this pre-cut for you out of Blackberry Bliss. This was cut from the, I'll show you here, this die from the coordinating die set, and it's really cool. It kind of looks like the netting the fishermen use. I love it. So anyway, you want to reach for this packet. Now in the mail, if you haven't received it yet, you will be receiving it very soon. You will have received your class packet, which contains all the paper materials to create these cards today. And you will see there in the package that came in the mail, you will see you have 3 clear envelopes. Each envelope contains the materials to make 2 of each card design. So we have 3 different card designs that we're going to work on today in class. And you have the materials to create 2 of each of those cards. Now I'm only obviously going to do 1 on camera because it's the same exact process for the second card. But I will show you how to make all 3 cards today on camera step by step. You will also have received in the email that I sent you with the link to this class, you will have received written instructions on how to put each of the 3 card designs together, and that includes measurements, that includes the sandwiches that you need for the dies for your big shot. It includes everything, so make sure to take a look at those written instructions as well. Also in that email from me, you will have received a photograph of the 3 finished cards so you can see where we're going with this class. You will also have received a supply list of all of the supplies used for each of the 3 card designs. Okay, so let's get to stamping. I'm really excited about this class. Okay, the first thing that you want to do is you want to go ahead and pull out your stitched square that's already been pre-cut for you from our Stitched Shapes framelit dies. So go ahead and pull this out, and this is just regular Whisper White cardstock. I'm going to grab some scratch paper. I just like to have it behind my images when I'm, or my cardstock rather, when I'm stamping sometimes, just in case I go off the paper or what have you. That way it goes on my scrap paper and not my work surface. We're going to pull out this beautiful octopus image here from the stamp set. These are clear mount red rubber stamps, so they go right on your acrylic blocks. You could also purchase this stamp set with the wood blocks if you had wanted to, but I don't offer that option in my classes because it's so expensive to ship it out. Okay, so you want to go ahead and grab your Tranquil Tide ink pad. We're going to go ahead and open that up, and we are going to get our little octopus here all inked up in our Tranquil Tide. I always like to flip mine over, make sure that I have even ink coverage on the back of the stamp. I do. And now we're simply going to stamp this in the center of the square, the stitch square. And it's okay if some of the image comes off the paper, just that's why we have our scratch paper there. So we're just framing this cute little octopus within the stitch square. There we go. Very cute. I'm going to go ahead and spritz some Stampin' Cleaner on my Stampin' Scrub, which is off camera here, so I can clean this stamp off, because we will be reusing this stamp for the next 2 cards as well. Okay, we can go ahead and close up our Tranquil Tide ink pad, and while we have our ink pads out, let's go ahead and grab the sentiment that I chose for this stamp set, and this says, "Thanks for reaching out." There are 3 different sentiments in this stamp set, and you could use any sentiment that you like. For this particular card design, I just happened to choose "Thanks for reaching out." Go ahead and grab your little piece of designer series paper here that has, it almost looks like little bubbles, and it's crumb cake colored. We can remove our octopus and set him aside, and then let's bring over our Blackberry Bliss ink. I've already gone ahead and grabbed that sentiment stamp. It's on a clear block ready to go. Now, because these are clear mount and not photopolymer stamps, you obviously can't see through them. So I like to do a little practice on my scrap paper just to make sure that I have the sentiment nice and straight. I do. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it on the bottom kind of left-hand side of this designer series paper. And I'm just going to center it along the side here. And I'm just going to stamp it right down on that designer series paper, just like so. Okay. And then we can go ahead and set this aside. And then we have one last panel to stamp. And this is kind of fun. We're going to be making our own background paper. Grab your piece of Tranquil Tide cardstock that's in your packet. This, by the way, measures 5 1/4 by 4. Again, all measurements are in that email that I sent you with the link to this video. Open up again your Tranquil Tide ink pad, and now we're going to be using this long stamp here. It almost looks like seaweed or a plant that grows under the in the ocean. I can't speak today, I apologize. You want to grab this long image here, and what we're going to do is we are going to create our own background paper. So turn your paper to the side. We know we have, from the finished card design here, we have our designer series paper at the bottom. So we know we don't have to worry about extending the stamp all the way to the bottom. So I turned it to the side here. I'm going to ink it up in the Tranquil Tide. And I'm simply going to, let me make sure I'm on frame here. I'm simply going to stamp it with a little bit. There's 2 different ends to the stamp. As you can see, there's a pointy end at the bottom here. That indicates the bottom of the stamp. So what I'm going to do when I first stamp down is I'm going to stamp a little bit off the paper just to create a fun design with the bottom of the stamp there at the bottom of the cardstock. Can you guys see that there? So what I did was I just simply have a little tiny bit coming off the top here, and then that's the bottom of the stamp, and it hits right about there. I'm going to ink it up again, and this time I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to have the entirety of the stamp on the panel. This just gave it a fun, unique design. You can certainly do this however you choose. And then I'm just going to be repeating this pattern all the way down the length here of this panel of cardstock. So ink it up, flip it over, entirety of the stamp down, ink it up, flip it back this way, a little bit of the stamp off, and so on. So we're just creating this fun pattern, and I will bring this up to the camera in just a moment. My lighting is not wonderful. Today we have had nothing but rain for a very long time now, several days in a row, so it was hard to get a good day to film, but I think you guys will still get the idea here. It's just kind of fun, I think, to create your own background paper with the stamps that come in the stamp set, and it really helps you really utilize that stamp set to the best of its ability. So this is what we have when we're all done. So see, we've just created a slightly staggered pattern using that particular image from the stamp set. So then the paper is going to be oriented this way. I just had it turned this way to help me kind of make sure I kept it lined up, and I used my scratch grid paper to help with that as well. So that's what that looks like. So we are all done now with our stamping, and it's time to simply go ahead and put this card together. You want to go ahead and grab your thick Whisper White card base, which is an A2 size card base. It measures 8.5 by 5.5. It's scored at 4.25. You're going to grab your Tranquil Tide panel that we just stamped, flip that over, and you want to grab your snail adhesive and just put some regular adhesive on the back here of this Tranquil Tide panel. You then want to center this on the front of our thick Whisper White card base here. So just center that down and stick it down. All right. The next step is we're going to take that panel, or that little strip rather, of designer series paper, flip it over, and go ahead and put some regular adhesive on the back of that panel. Remember, this is also the panel we stamped our sentiment on. I'm going to open the card base again. I just find I get usually better centering when I have the card base open for some reason. And we are just going to run that along the bottom of that Tranquil Tide panel. And as you can see, our pattern looks like it keeps going, even though the stamp wasn't quite long enough for that whole panel. So I thought that was a neat little design. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this cutout that I pre-cut for you using a die from the Coordinating Thinlet die set, and it is cut from Blackberry Bliss cardstock. I'm going to grab a piece of scratch paper. This one isn't as clean because I'm going to be using glue, so I kind of reuse this when I'm using my Zig glue pen to kind of get things sticky, because of course it goes through to the paper. So that's why I just use a well-used scrap paper for this part. And I'm just getting glue all over the back of this. You could use any glue that you have. I just find that these glue, Zig glue pens are really good for videos because I can get it done very quickly. And now I'm just going to set this down here in the bottom right-hand corner of our card front. And I'm going to stick it down. What I like to sometimes do is just take an acrylic block and just stick it down on top of this for just a moment to let that glue stick to the paper underneath. Well, while that is drying, we can take our scalloped square cut from Blackberry Bliss cardstock, and this was cut from our Layering Squares framelit rather dies. And then remember that stitched square in the beginning that we stamped our cute little octopus on. Let's adhere these together. So put some regular adhesive on the back of your white stitched square, and then center that right on the front of that Blackberry Bliss scalloped square and stick it down. And then what we want to do is flip this over and grab some dimensionals here. I just like to give sometimes the main panel a little bit of a pop. So we've got some dimensionals stuck down. We're going to peel our dimensionals off. Get the backings off. I tell you, sometimes taking the backings of these dimensionals off takes longer than the stamping. Okay, this is nice and adhered down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just simply stick our little octopus guy right sort of in the center. So he's over top of some of the wire or the mesh here, but it doesn't cover our sentiment, of course. Okay, so we have that done. Now, you have a piece of the burlap ribbon. Some of you have linen thread instead, and that's simply because my order from Stampin' Up! Did not come in time. So whichever one you have, it's going to be the same process. You're going to stick it inside of the card base here, and then if you're using, you're just going to do a little double knot here along the top. So I'm just simply going to, this is very thick, so you just want to tie a simple double knot if you're using the burlap. Same with the linen thread, although with the linen thread you could also quite easily tie a bow. It's a little bit more difficult with this thick burlap to tie a nice and pretty bow. So I just went with a double knot so it stays. Then I'm going to actually peel this up for just a moment, the octopus, just the top here, because I want it to come over top of the burlap. So if you actually want to do your burlap first and then stick the octopus down, that might be better. So what I'm going to do now then is just sort of stick this down on top of that burlap, because I want that octopus to sort of, like I said at the beginning, be the star of the show. And now I'm just simply going to trim the burlap. I cut way more than I needed, which I always do, but I always want to make sure you guys have plenty of materials to get both cards completed. Okay, for a final finishing touch for this card, you guys were given 6 pearls. So that's 3 for each card. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick the pearls. I'm just going to put all three of them in the kind of upper right hand corner of our little octopus panel. You can place them wherever you like. This is where I chose to place them for my card design, but again, it's up to you where you place them. And that is the end of card number 1. Super simple card to create, but I really am happy with how this one came out. So this is the final card here. Very cute. All right, let's move right along here to card number 2. Are you guys ready for card number 2? This one is really cute as well, I think, and quite easy to put together. All right, so this is card number 2. As you can see, I chose a different sentiment for this one. Have a wonderful adventure. We'll use the octopus again, and then some of the coral from the stamp set that we die cut out with the coordinating dies. We also created our own background paper again on this panel here of mint macaron cardstock, and then we have some designer series paper as well. We have some Night of Navy baker's twine up at the top here that we made a bow, and then we have some silver metallic pearls along the card front as well. So really super simple card, but I think a really pretty card design, and I hope that you like it. So let's go ahead and get started with this particular card design. The packet that you want to reach for is going to look like this. All right, so it's going to look like this. It's going to have that designer piece of cardstock. It's going to have some Night of Navy, mint macaron, a stitched circle, and then a couple little rectangles here. One in Blackberry Bliss, one Whisper White. So, and then you'll also have some Night of Navy twine in your packet. I have mine on a spool that I just need to cut when we get to that part of the card. So let's go ahead and do our stamping first. Grab your stitched circle. This was again pre-cut for you out of Whisper White cardstock using our Stitched Shapes framelit dies. I'm going to go ahead and bring over my scratch paper again, just in case the little image goes off the paper a little bit. And you're going to grab your Blackberry Bliss ink pad. Go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to grab that octopus again. We're going to get him nice and inked up in the Blackberry Bliss ink. I like to flip it over, make sure I have even ink coverage on the back. I do. And now we're just going to center him in the middle of this circle panel here and stamp him down. Okay, lovely. All right. Go ahead and clean that stamp off. We can set this aside. Go ahead and grab your mint. Actually, next step that you'd probably want to do, since you still have the Blackberry Bliss out, grab your little rectangle of Whisper White cardstock. I chose the Have a Wonderful Adventure sentiment here from the stamp set. To save some time, I already went ahead and stamped this in the Blackberry Bliss ink as well. So you can go ahead and stamp that and then set that aside. You can close up your Blackberry Bliss ink. We are done with that for this card. For now, we're going to have a little bit more stamping in just a moment. Go ahead and grab your Tranquil Tide ink pad now. Open that up and grab your mint macaron long rectangle. This is 5 inches long by 2 inches wide. And we're going to go ahead and create our own background paper. Again, much like we did with card number 1, except we're going to be using the netting image this time from the stamp set. So let me pull that out of the stamp case here. And I'm just going to stick it on the back of an acrylic block. And there is no special way to do this. I'm simply inking up the image in the Tranquil Tide, and then I'm just gonna stamp it down. Isn't that cool? I love doing a darker green ink on a lighter, or darker any color on a lighter colored cardstock. It really, I think, looks really cool. So I'm just going along here and just covering this cardstock panel with this netting. I think it looks really cool. And again, it's just a fun way to create your own background paper. Okay, so that's what we have. Clean that image off here. We are done with the netting image, so I'm going to stick that in the stamp case. All right, and then you can set this aside. Now, in the card base in your packet, you will have, in both card bases, you will have an extra piece of Whisper White cardstock. I just have some for me that's to the side on my table here, but yours will actually be inside your card base. You want to grab this coral image here from the stamp set. Alrighty, and we are going to go ahead and stamp this 3 times. Twice in the Tranquil Tide ink, and then once in our Blackberry Bliss. So go ahead and stamp that out twice. It doesn't really matter if it's crooked because we are going to be cutting this out with the die cuts. So twice in the Tranquil Tide, and then once in the Blackberry Bliss. Okay, there we go. And as you can see, I wasn't worried about how these appeared on the paper because I'm going to be die cutting them out. So what you would do next is go ahead and grab your coordinating die set, and you want to grab this die here that coordinates with this coral image, and then you would simply line it up here, use your magnetic plate on your Big Shot to help this stay in place, line this coral up, and then run it through your Big Shot. So the sandwich would be magnetic plate, cutting plate, paper, die face down, second cutting plate, and then run it through your Big Shot just like that. To save time, I have already cut mine out. So here are mine already cut out. 1 Tranquil Tide, 2 Tranquil Tide, and then the third is in the Blackberry Bliss. So that's what they look like, all nice and die cut out with the coordinating dies. So let's go ahead and set these aside. So now we have done all of our stamping for this card. We can put our scratch paper away. We can set our ink pads to the side, and now we just get to put this beautiful card together. Go ahead and grab your Night of Navy cardstock panel, and this measures 4 by 5 1/4. We are going to go ahead and take this mint macaron panel that we stamped our netting on, and we are going to center it along the left-hand side of this Night of Navy cardstock panel. So just use some regular snail adhesive, put some adhesive on the back here, and then as I said, you'll just simply be centering this along the left-hand side of this Night of Navy cardstock panel, just like so. Nice and easy. All right, then we're going to take this panel here of the beautiful Designer Series paper. And again, I chose colors of ink and cardstock that coordinate with this beautiful paper. So this particular piece has some mint macaron in it. It has some Night of Navy in it. It has some Blackberry Bliss and some Tranquil Tide. So that's why I chose those ink pad colors, as I said at the beginning of the video, because I knew I was going to be using Designer Series paper on each of the card designs for this class. Now this, we're just going to come about 1/8 of an inch up from the top of the mint macaron panel, and then center this that way in the bottom right corner of this particular panel. And so that is how this panel is going to look. Go ahead and grab your thick Whisper White card base now, and we can go ahead and adhere this to our card base. Our card base is a standard A2 size card base, and it measures 8.5. I'm sorry, this one's cut differently. It's top folding, so it measures 11 by 4 1/4, and it's scored at 5.5. So I'm going to open it up so I can get this nice and centered here on the front of my card base. And I think I said this already, but it's a thick Whisper White. If my card bases are white, it's the thick Whisper White. I really love it. Next, go ahead and grab your sentiment and the little piece of Blackberry Bliss that goes behind it. And let's go ahead and adhere that together. Just some regular snail, and then center that sentiment right on top of that Blackberry Bliss rectangle that I pre-cut for you. I'm gonna shift mine a little bit. I didn't have it exactly straight. There we go. Okay. We can flip this over again. Grab some dimensionals. The trick is finding where I put them. There they are. All right. Go ahead and grab a couple dimensionals. I'm going to use 3 just so it's nice and even on the back. Pull the backings off of your dimensionals. And then I'm going to stick this in the bottom right corner, sort of centered along the outside border of the Designer Series paper. So right about there. Okay, next I'm going to grab my little octopus panel that we stamped at the very beginning of this card class, for this card design rather. I'm going to grab some more dimensionals here and stick them on the back, peel the backings off, which again for me is the hardest part. I think if I had fingernails this would be easier, but I can't seem to keep nails very long. All right, and now we're going to stick this little guy right about here. just so he kind of covers that corner where the mint macaron and the designer series paper meet. All right, the next thing we want to do is let's grab our gluey scratch paper, and I'm going to add glue to the back of the two Tranquil Tide corals that we cut out, stamped and then cut out. And I'm just going to add a bunch of glue to the back. All right, so now I'm going to remove my gluey scratch paper there. I'm going to stick one down here, and then the other one right next to it, overlapping it slightly and coming slightly up onto this sentiment panel. I'm going to grab an acrylic block and just slide that over top for just a moment to let that dry and really absorb into the paper. Now for this little Blackberry Bliss coral that we cut out, I'm just going to grab my mini dimensionals and give this one a little bit of pop, and it's going to sit right over top of the two Tranquil Tide corals. So they'll kind of peek out behind this one. So I'm going to pull the backing off there of the little mini dimensionals and then just stick this right in the center here. So we have that popped slightly. Can you guys see that there at the bottom? You can always refer as well to the picture of the finished cards in the email that I sent. So for example, today I don't have the best lighting here in the craft room. So if you need to see better the finished design, by all means, please refer to that finished photograph of the finished cards. Now you guys were given 10 silver metallic pearls, 5 for each card. I go a little crazy sometimes with my classes, and so I always have to stock up on rhinestones and pearls and such because I just love to use them. I think they make such a subtle but fun little touch to the finished project. You can place them anywhere that you want. I put 3 up here and 2 down here, but honestly, wherever you want to put them is fine. There's no right or wrong. And then for the final touch on this card, we are going to grab our navy twine, baker's twine. Yours is already cut for you, pre-cut and measured properly, so you have enough. I just didn't do that for mine, so I just have to wind it off the spool really quick here and give it a cut. And then we're just gonna, as you saw, I placed this inside the card base here, and we are just gonna tie a bow along the front of the card. So let's go ahead and do that quickly here. So I'm just gonna tie a regular bow here up along the top of our card base. I'm not the best bow tire, so you know, when I create cards when I'm not on camera, I usually have to fiddle with the bow for just a little bit to get it exactly how I want it. But for the purposes of the video, I'm just gonna probably call it okay and you know, not fiddle with it too much. But of course you guys can fiddle with your bow however long you need to. I'm going to now go ahead and grab a mini glue dot, which is right here. I like to put mini glue dots when I tie bows like this right in the center of the back of the bow, and then that helps stick it down to the card front so that bow doesn't go wobbling all around. And then I just want to go ahead and trim the tails. I cut this one way too long. I cut way more than I needed, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim the tails. I can save those pieces for a future project. And there we go, guys. That is card number 2. Really sweet and simple, but I think a really fun card design. So I hope you guys like that. All right, so we are moving right along here, and we're going to move on now to our third and final card for this class, and that is this card here. And I think this one's my favorite, although honestly, I really like them all. I'm really happy with how these cards turned out. All right, so you want to grab for the packet that looks like this. All right, so you're going to have this small strip of this beautiful designer series paper. You're going to have a Tranquil Tide stitch circle. You're going to have a crumb cake netting pre-cut for you. You're going to have some extras, a little Blackberry Bliss sand dollar, and some seaweed, a mint macaron, and then this little mint macaron punch for our sentiment. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab that packet. Now inside your card base will also, for this card design, be another piece of scrap rather, Whisper White cardstock. I just have a big panel here. I have a bunch of scraps to my right here, so mine doesn't, yours is going to be smaller than mine, but it will be located inside of the card bases in your class packet. Go ahead and grab your cute little octopus design, stamp, and your Blackberry Bliss cardstock, ink pad. Go ahead and get your little octopus nice and inked up in the Blackberry Bliss ink, and then stamp him on your Whisper White scrap piece of cardstock. Okay, so he is stamped down. We can go ahead and close up our Blackberry Bliss ink pad. We are done with that ink pad, but we are not done with our stamping quite yet. Next, what you want to do is grab your octopus coordinating coordinating die that comes in the coordinating die set, and you want to get it nice and lined up around that octopus. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some Post-it note tape. This is just a really low tack tape, just because I'm on camera and I have to kind of jar things to get my Big Shot up here, and I don't want this to move. I'm going to now grab my Big Shot, and I'll show you the sandwich that I'm using. I'm using, obviously, the magnetic plate, which would help keep that in place, and then a cutting pad, and then you put your paper with the die face down right on top, and then that second cutting pad, and then you just simply run this through the Big Shot. So you just turn the handle there. I know it's hard to get the whole Big Shot on frame here, but I think you guys get the idea. And then go ahead and pull this out. We can put our Big Shot away. And then I'll just peel up this tape. I wouldn't have used this tape if I was just doing this on my own, but I had to, like I said, finagle a few things in this small space of the camera. So I didn't want this to move. So I went ahead and just used some low tack tape here. I'm just going to poke out these little spots or places here where there's a little bit of extra cardstock that you just have to punch out. And here is our die cut octopus. Isn't he adorable? I just love this stamp set and die set. It's awesome. Okay, so I can reuse this cardstock for another project. Just let me get these scraps off of here quickly here. And now we are done with our Big Shot. Everything else, we're using a lot more dies for this card, but I have pre-cut them for you for the class. As we go along, I'll let you know which plates I used with the Big Shot and such as we go along here making this card. Okay, so we can set our little octopus aside for right now. Go ahead and set him to the side. And what I'm going to do next is have you grab the Tranquil Tide stitched circle. And this was cut for you out of Tranquil Tide cardstock using our stitched shapes framelit dies. Oh my goodness. You want to grab this particular image right here. It's just a really fun textury image, kind of grungy looking, and I'm just gonna use that to create a fun background to this panel. So there is nothing really realistic necessarily about this. This is just fun grungy stamping. So grab your Tranquil Tide ink pad here and that image, get it nice and inked up along. Flip your your stamp over, make sure you have even coverage of ink on the back, and then we're just going to have fun stamping this image across this circle. Feel free to overlap so you get all of the circle covered. This is such, and I'll pull this up to the camera so you can really see, this is such a fun stamp. I love creating this textured background, and I love being able to use so many different stamps in the stamp set in a sort of unique different ways to really get a lot of use out of the stamp set. So this is what it looks like, and I just think that is so cool. Just a fun, like I said, a fun little textured background. Okay, so you can set that aside. The next thing that you want to do is from the stamp set here, we are going to be grabbing the You're One of a Kind little tiny sentiment right there. And I'm going to grab an acrylic block. I'm going to try to get this lined up here on the back. And then you want to grab your little pre-punched mint macaron panel here of cardstock. Now, I'm going to do a practice first to make sure I have this nice and lined up on my scrap paper. So we're still using the Tranquil Tide, and I'm just going to stamp it down on my scrap paper. That looks pretty good. I'm going to do it one more time. Oops, I have a little bit tilted, don't I? A little bit tilted. Let's try it one more time. Okay. Sometimes the tinier the stamp, the harder it is for me to get it straight when it's not photopolymer. I don't know why. I've always been kind of a crooked stamper. I don't know why. All right, but that's why we have the scrap paper, right? So we can give this, you know, our best shot. All right, let me try one more time. Okay, I think I need to tilt it just a little bit to the right. There we go. Okay, so what you want to do is stamp it all the way to the right side here of this particular, not in the triangle part of the cutout, but just to the slightly to the right of that triangle portion. If my head gets in the frame, I apologize. I'm gonna flip that over. I kind of got some ink on it before I was ready. All right, go ahead and stamp that down. It's a little bit crooked. I don't like that. I'm gonna try again. Here we go. Okay, so just stamp that down here like so. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Now we can close up our Tranquil Tide ink pad, and we are all done with our stamping, I believe, for this class. What I want to do now is just take this little sentiment panel. Again, it's a punch that I punched out for you. And for this card design, I just kind of cut off the end of the punch to give it a straight end there. And you can just throw that little strip away. All right, we can put our scrap paper away. It's time now to put this card together. Go ahead and grab your card base, which is an A2 size card base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And we have Blackberry Bliss panel here that is 5 1/4 by 4. Flip it over, put some regular adhesive on the back of that panel. And then just center that right on the front here of this thick Whisper White card base. Just like so. Now we have this beautiful panel here from the Designer Series paper stack. Go ahead and turn that over. Put some adhesive on the back of that. And then just center it flush with the bottom of this panel of Blackberry Bliss. So right along the bottom here. Just like so. Okay, just like that. All right, now what we want to do is we want to grab our circle that we stamped our fun grungy background on, flip it over, grab some dimensionals, and give this little circle panel a little bit of a pop. Okay. Again with the backings. I don't know why they're giving me such trouble today. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and stick this circle more towards the left, so we're left of center with this particular card design. All right, now what we want to do is grab your crumb cake little what looks like net that has been pre-cut out for you. It looks like netting, and this was cut from crumb cake cardstock. And again, the sandwich that you want to use in your big shot is your standard cutting plate, your thin die adapter, your precision base plate, your paper, your die face down on top of the paper, and then a cutting plate. And that will be in the directions as well. But I wanted to save some time and not go through all of that on camera. I then, once it's cut, I grab my die brush, put the die face down on top, and just run the die brush over, and it'll pop right out, and all those little pieces will come right out for you. But again, for the purposes of these cards for the class, I did go ahead and pre-cut this for you. I'm gonna put a lot of glue here on the back, so I'm using my well-used here scrap paper to get the glue all over the back of it here. And then what I want to do is stick it so some of it's over top of this circle, and then some of it's to the right and to the bottom of the circle. And we're going to want to put a heavy acrylic block over top of that just to let that glue absorb into the paper below so it sticks nice and good for us. The next thing that we're going to do while that's drying, I'm just going to set that aside for a moment. I'm going to grab my little octopus that we stamped and cut out, flip him over. I'm going to grab some regular dimensionals and some mini dimensionals so we can get him kind of nice and coated with dimensionals along the back here. And mostly probably going to use the minis because there's lots of little spaces here. So just go ahead and get your mini dimensionals on the back of him here. I love these mini dimensionals. I'm so thrilled that Stampin' Up! Came out with these. They're just perfect. If you don't have them, you can obviously just cut up your regular dimensionals, which is how I used to always do it, but it's just very convenient to have the mini size now. I just love, love, love it. So now I'm just pulling off the backings of these dimensionals here. Okay, there we go. All the backings are off. We can bring our card panel back over, and I'm going to go ahead and stick him down like so. You guys see that? Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my glue scratch paper again, and I'm going to take this little seaweed that I pre-cut for you out of mint macaron cardstock. You don't need the precision base plate in my experience with this particular die cut, so I just use the magnetic plate, cutting plate, die, paper die face down, and then second cutting plate. For that, it was an easy little piece to cut. I'm going to kind of stick this a little bit back behind the octopus, just a little tiny bit, like so. And then let that stick down and adhere. I'm going to stick a little block there on the top so it can adhere. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the little sand dollar that I pre-cut for you out of Blackberry Bliss cardstock, and I'm just going to add some glue to the back of that as well. Okay. We can get our gluey scrap paper out of the way, and then I'm going to take the starfish and put it about right there like so. All right, now I'm going to take the little sentiment that we cut out. Remember, we punched and then stamped and then cut that end off. Flip it over, grab some mini dimensionals, peel the backings off of those, and then I'm going to stick my sentiment here in the upper right hand corner and have that straight edge just sort of butt right up against the Blackberry Bliss panel there. Okay, now for a finishing touch, I'm going to add 3 pearls. You guys were given 6 pearls in your packets, 1 for each card design. So I'm just going to put them in the upper right hand corner here. You can again place them wherever you want. Just kind of sticking them willy-nilly around. I'm going to actually put that there like that. Okay. No right or wrong to where you place your accents. Okay guys, and that is card number 3. Super fun, super easy to do, and I think a great card design at the end of the day. Okay guys, so let's just recap quickly. Here's the last card that we did. And then here was card number 2 here, and then of course we have card number 1. All right guys, that is it. Thank you guys so much for joining this card class. I enjoyed creating these cards so much for you, and I hope that you love them. Thank you again so much. I appreciate all of you so much and your business. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks guys. Bye bye.